Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about a really important aspect about Dungeons & Dragons that isn't talked about a lot, and that is its necessity of having to serve the broadest audience in all of tabletop role-playing games, okay? All right, so let's jump into this. I want to talk to you about Louisville, Kentucky. And 3 years of my life I spent there, and something I learned there that has helped me to understand Dungeons & Dragons better, and then I think sophisticated players need to learn this, eccentric players need to learn this, and veteran players need to learn this. Alright, so Dungeons & Dragons catches flack from every direction. Legit. There's so many games that fly under the radar and get all this, they don't have to deal with the problems of Dungeons & Dragons because nobody cares about their game, right? And so they don't have to deal with a lot of the woke questions. They don't have to deal with a lot of... That's the biggest issue they don't have to deal with. But it's a big deal, right? Dungeons & Dragons catches a lot of heat over the woke questions. And actually, you know what? Game design, right? They catch a lot of heat over, oh, this isn't the best game. It doesn't have the freshest rule system. Blah, 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 right? They catch heat from every direction, and they take a lot of flack and a lot of guff that just, frankly, in my opinion, is not deserved. All right, so this is probably between 1996 and 1999. I lived in Louisville, Kentucky. Now, why on earth did I ever live in Louisville, Kentucky? I live on the East Coast right now. Live about 15 miles south of Philadelphia. Okay, so I'm an East Coast Philly boy. Right? But for 3 years of my life, I lived in Louisville, Kentucky. Now, why did that happen? Well, I have a beautiful wife, and she has family there, right? So I think I was like 26 years old, and we had been married for about 4 or 5 years, and my wife was missing her family, and I'm like, hey, we can move there. It's okay. All I care about in this world is just be close to you. I can get a new job there. Let's do it, man. Let's go out there, and we'll live life in Louisville, Kentucky, and be close to your family, right? So we did. Right? So we moved to Louisville, Kentucky with the idea that we would spend a lot of time with her family. Well, here's the thing. We moved there, but we actually didn't spend a lot of time with her family. It was kind of crazy. We would make Christmas trips and summer trips when we didn't live in Louisville, Kentucky. But once we got there, we only saw them a little bit more than we did. They only saw them 3-4 times a year, maybe 5 or 6 rather than 2 or 3. Right? So, and we realized, and we were there in Louisville, Kentucky. We ended up moving back to Philadelphia, okay? So, but I lived there for 3 years of my life. And here's what I learned when I was there. When I was there, we would go to church. We'd stay after church, and we'd go to the potluck, right? And I literally couldn't find a thing to eat. I was there's literally 20 dishes, and there ain't nothing to eat. I'm like, oh my gosh, all this food is so bad, right? We go to family dinners, and I couldn't find nothing to eat. I was just like, where's the decent food? All this food is bad, right? And we would just go, we would just go to the local restaurants, right? And I'd order a taco, or I'd order spaghetti. It was all bad, just so bad, right? And I realized, and I was like, and Leanne started asking me, she's like, I would come home and then I would eat after we had just ate, and then she's like, what's going on, right? And I was like, well, I don't like any of the food here, right? And she's like, well, the problem is none of it's seasoned, right? And I was like, what? And she's like, you like spicy food, and in Louisville, Kentucky, you ain't gonna find no spicy food, generally, right? You can go out of your way to find it, but at gatherings, they're gonna serve what they like here in Louisville, Kentucky. And here, black pepper is considered an exotic spice. And I just started paying attention, and boy, was she right. It was just the food is bland. Just bland, okay? And it's not that, and it's not even as bland. It's they consider butter and just portions of, meat and potatoes. Very, very plain food is what they like. They don't like a lot of spice in the food, generally. Okay. And so I was kind of well, that's just bad. And she's like, it's not bad. It's what is expected. It's what they like here. It's it's their culture. Like, it's a thing here in Louisville, Kentucky, right? And I was like, okay, I understand that now. And I realized she was right, that this was not bad food. It was just bland, considered to my taste. And I like incredibly spicy food, right? And so, I put red peppers on a lot of stuff. I put hot sauce on a lot of stuff. And I expect whatever I'm eating to have already been heavily spiced, right? So, like, I just really like spicy food, right? And so I want some kick with whatever I'm eating. And so it really was a shocker to me, right? Well, guess what? Dungeons & Dragons is Louisville, Kentucky food. Just bland, right? By the way, I'm fully aware that there's like dry rub ribs and a few other, things. So they have some stuff with spice. But overall, at gatherings, it's bland food, okay? And here's the kicker. D&D is that Louisville, Kentucky food, right? It's just very generic, and it can't have that extra spicy kick that a lot of veterans really like, that a lot of eccentric dungeon masters and players, that a lot of veteran dungeon masters and players, and that a lot of sophisticated dungeon masters and players really like. It can't be that. And now, why can't Dungeons & Dragons be, really spicy and bold? Well, it's not its market. It really has the broadest audience. And when you have the broadest audience, like black pepper becomes an exotic spice. You ain't going to be running any ghost peppers up on Dungeons & Dragons. And this has surprised some people. Surprised some authors recently. Thought they could, put some really spicy kick on their particular, material that they were putting forward, and found out, oh, no. This is going to get flattened out, right? And so basically, I think it's very important to understand that Dungeons & Dragons is not bad, right? A lot of people are like, oh, the rules compared to this game or that game, and why can't it be, super woke and have all these just cutting edge intersectionality concerns in it, right? And when they do, it turns into tears and flames. When they even try it, it turns into tears and flames really fast, right? Because the reality is, it is, in my opinion, a Louisville, Kentucky, taste, right? It's an incredibly broad taste that millions of Americans, like that food in Louisville, Kentucky, I realized millions of Americans love bland food. Just love it, right? Can't get enough of it. Here's a perfect example of that, right? Is Chick-fil-A. I don't like Chick-fil-A. I consider it incredibly bland. America loves it. The Chick-fil-A that's in my hometown has 2 driveways that are constantly packed. People like bland. They like middle of the road. They want it plain and simple. And that's one of the reasons why Dungeons & Dragons is so generic and comes off to veteran players, sophisticated players, eccentric players as super generic and super bland. It's not bad. It's just specifically designed to appeal to a very broad audience. And I think we, in commentary, D&D commentary, often forget this. And there's a lot of, putting up your nose. And I was very tempted to put my nose up and be like, the food here in Louisville, Kentucky is bland. That is bad, right? It wasn't bad. It just wasn't to my taste. And it was to the taste of tens, maybe well over 100 million Americans like that kind of food, right? So if D&D is not scratching your itch, it doesn't mean it's a bad game. It's mean it was built from the ground up to appeal to a broad base. And guess what? It does. It works, right? D&D is the top dog in the tabletop role-playing game. That is not a debatable subject, all right? It has, the only debate is whether D&D has more market share than all other games combined, right? So, it is winning, And so I think it's really important to understand that, that D&D is built from the ground up to appeal to an incredibly broad audience. And that doesn't mean it's bad. It means it's different, right? We need to remember that. That's my opinion. What do you think? Do you think that this is an accurate understanding of Dungeons & Dragons? That the reason a lot of people, why you see a lot of veteran players, sophisticated players, and eccentric players and DMs, backing away from Dungeons & Dragons just because it really is built to appeal to a much broader audience than just them. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.